إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار لآيات لأولي الألباب.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Islam and Science on MTA International Africa. We are coming to you from the Wahab Adam Studios here in Ghana. Today in the program, we are continuing our series on the mountains. And in this program, we want to explore the benefits of the mountains to mankind. We do know that Allah has created everything for a purpose. So the mountains that we see around us, what purpose do they serve us? How are they of any benefit to us? Does science and Islam converge on this subject, or there's some divergence of views? To help me explore these questions, Dr. Munir Dawood of the Atomic Energy Commission. Doctor, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
And Mualim Abdul Ghaffur Said, who is a missionary of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community here in Ghana. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Okay. So to begin with, Dr. Saib, does the mountain in any way support the life of man on this earth?
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, the mountain has several purposes for mankind. Not just mankind, but living organisms in general. In the area of biodiversity, preservation of food crops, extraction of energy, water, and even
when you say extraction of energy,
it means we can get energy, from the mountain. I'll explain.
Okay.
And then it also serves as accommodation for many people. Okay. So let's look at them one by one. Biodiversity. When we say biodiversity, what do we mean? We know that all living creatures together, give a balance to our ecosystem. And so all species are important. That is why the United Nations Development Program seeks to protect a lot of animals and plant species that are being endangered as a result of activities of man. So how do mountains, support, biodiversity? They do so because mountains, provide space or surface for a lot of crops and animal species, including those that are endangered. They live, on the mountains and around it.
Endangered means they are now scarce.
They are getting scarce.
Okay.
Actually, as a result of, man activities. And I mean, there are several crops and plants and animals that you wouldn't find elsewhere, but because they have safe haven on the mountains, you'll find them there. So when we say they preserve biodiversity, that is what we mean.
Okay.
Aside that, we also know that, mountains, because in several countries, mountains are restricted areas, and so most mountains come under institutional control of, cities and even the authorities of the country. And because of that, activities like, game, hunting and farming and, anything that will endanger species on the mountain are, prohibited. Okay. Now, source of water. How do mountains, provide water? In the previous episode, I mentioned that there is a lot of shifts leading to the formation of mountains.
Yeah.
And so we have fault lines, we have gaps, we have cavities, in mountains. And mountains, because of their high altitudes, and they tend to, provide surfaces for water vapor when they escape from the ground level into space.
Okay.
So they capture them. Their surfaces capture this water, what do you call it? The water vapor. And depending on the location of the mountain, if the mountain is very close to the equator, or let's say if it is a temperate region, you are likely to have the water vapor becoming ice when temperatures are very low. And you could have a lot. That's why most of the time you see that you have snow on mountain surfaces. Because they are able to capture a lot of water on their surfaces. And it's also as a result of their altitude, their height above ground level. And so this water that is stored in the form of snow can also condense depending on change in temperature, and then it will flow as water for use at for those who are downwards. Or sometimes it flows and form a little river in the valleys, and so on and so forth. So most often you find that at valleys, you have water that have its source from the mountain. So that is how the mountain provide water. And then some of these water, small rivers that are formed, from the water of the mountains, can also be used as dams, mini dams, for maybe irrigation purpose, or even for mini, energy extraction. So that is also, in terms of the energy extraction. Now, we also know that it provides food also, like I mentioned earlier, and then it provides accommodation. A lot of people have shelter on mountains. And so, for instance, a city called Aksaray and then Cappadocia in Turkey, you find a lot of buildings that are made in Mount Tyros. If you know Mount Tyros, you have a lot of beautiful scenes of mountains with houses in them,
in the mountains,
and both the ancient and even the current people live in those shelters. And people, they also serve as tourist sites for people to go and see. There are several benefits of the mountains that we cannot exhaust. A typical, an important one is also being used as a tourist, attraction site. And whenever there is a site that attracts people to the place, economic activities are boomed in those places. And so it has a very positive bearing on economic as well.
Murabi sir, doctor have listed numerous benefits, or if you like, purposes of the mountains. What does the Holy Quran or Islam say with regard to what benefit the mountains could be of to mankind?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much. The last part of what Doctor was saying is just like a commentary of what the Quran has spoken about the mountains with respect to the support of life. It gives shelter, just as he said, and that is exactly what Allah says in the Holy Quran with respect to the mountains. If you check chapter 7 and verse 75 of the Holy Quran, that's Surah Al-Araf, Allah says, "And remember the time when he made you inheritors of his favors, after Ad, who was a prophet, and assigned you an abode in the land, and you built places in its plains, and you hewn the mountains into houses." So it's in conformity with what you are talking about. But this was done 1,500 years ago. But houses were hewn from the mountains. Remember therefore the favors of Allah, and commit not iniquity in the earth, causing disorder.
Yeah.
Perfectly
Describing.
described.
Yeah.
And today's history is conforming to what Quran have said long ago.
Okay.
So the idea of hewing a house from a mountain is not new
Okay.
to Islam. It is something that was there before with respect to those that Allah created before our existence. That is one purpose of the support of life from mountains.
yeah.
It's also a place not only for human beings. The bees also make their houses there.
Yeah.
And we all know what the bees does. They make honey.
Yeah.
And today the purest form of sweet and medicine is honey.
It's honey. Yeah.
So it's supporting life. If you be told by doctors not to take sugar, but honey, they advise you can take.
Yeah.
And these things take their shelter from mountains, many of them,
Yeah.
and they heal us. So with respect to this also, if you see in the early days of Islam,
Yeah.
when there were battles, if you see when the disbelievers were on top of a mountain and the Muslims were in a valley,
Yeah.
you know, standing at that peak and throwing an arrow downwards is more dangerous because the speed will be more because it's descending.
Yeah.
And also sending it up because of the winds and the other things, it will not be going.
Even gravity
Yes,
will be pulling it backwards.
it wouldn't be going that fast.
Yes.
What did the prophet do? He prayed. He prayed with his companions, and that mountain became slippery.
Okay.
And because it's desert, after it rained, the sand became stiff and the ground was okay for them to stand. So they could repel the disbelievers with all their might. Because they had no ground, they couldn't stand properly, so they could not attack properly.
Yeah.
And this gave victory to the Muslims. So you can also see that it is a form that Allah has used to solve a case.
Yes.
And
yes,
that is another benefit of it. But the main benefit is what I was explaining, that when you are coming down from there,
Yes. Yes.
the speed is more than when you are going up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as a form of exercise to support life, man needs mountain for his growth.
Okay.
Yes.
Doctor also mentioned of water, and we do see when it rains, the runoff water gathers at a point. You sometimes have streams emerging from it, rivers, and these are sources of water for many communities in Africa in particular, isn't it?
Of course,
Yeah.
not only that, we also get fish from there
Exactly.
after some time. So we don't only drink the
Yes,
water, but
yes.
it breeds other things that are supporting our diets.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Dr. Saib, in modern day science, we see GPS, we see machines that are able to give us directions here and there. But I wondered, before the GPS and those things, how people were able to move. And one of the answers you often would come across is the reference to mountains and how far they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has this become obsolete, or we still use it in science today, like mountains for navigation and...
Yeah, it still serves that purpose, actually. You know, apart from the olden days where, you know, people will use the mountain to navigate, you know, to find their direction and to make locations, etc.
Yes.
With, you know, the advent of sophisticated, you know, devices using geographical positioning, you know, devices, i.e. the GPS, the mountain is not neglected because even such devices embed as a physical feature in their program because it becomes so easy if you have in the application that, you know, it tells you that at such and such location there is such mountain of such height and all that, to give you the features so that, you know, it becomes a feature of identity, you know, a feature that with the use of the application, you still can identify and know where you are. So they are not, totally neglected. They are still being used. The olden days, they were used, sailors used them, people trying to find, direction to different locations, use them. And in modern days, with even the GPS, we are still using them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Robisa, does the Islam give us any hint of navigation with respect to using mountains?
Yes, please.
Or
You see, even before the mountains, Allah has spoken about signs that man use as navigation before your GPS or whatever you had.
okay.
If I take you back to what the Quran says, which I will refer later,
Yes.
Allah says He has created the stars as a guide.
Okay.
You see, guide for what? To the right place.
Okay.
So the star was something that was used as the first GPS where there was no any technology.
Okay.
So the moon, Allah have said same about them. So these celestial or heavenly bodies that are being created are for the guidance of mankind,
Yeah.
but not to mislead him. But let me take to the Quran so that we'll all be okay that yes, this was already found in the Holy Quran. Allah says in chapter 16, verse 16, that's Surah An-Nahl, He says, and He has placed in earth firm mountains to sustain you with and rivers and roots that you may take the right way. The underlining word is you may take the right way. Navigation is to take you to the right destination.
Yes.
And other marks too. By them and by the stars, they follow the right direction. So it's conforming to what we have said.
Yes, yes.
So the GPS of Allah is much greater. You don't need internet. You don't need any connection. Yes. Mountain, if it is there, doesn't move. It will be there.
It will be
so
there.
if I tell you from this mountain, you turn left, you will get to the house of the king. It will remain the same for ages until something, maybe man through his activities might have cleared the mountain.
Yes.
But the mountain by its nature would be there for years. So those natural directions that Allah has told us about were there for man to improve upon.
Okay.
As we move about in the earth, we are not just to move about just as we were created. We are to perfect what Allah has given to us. That shows that we are grateful for what He has provided for us.
Yeah, it's amazing that the verse you are quoting also talks about the rivers and water bodies that Doctor spoke about as driving their source from mountains. Yeah, to conclude on a lighter note, the mountains do provide a source of entertainment, isn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It does. And
People hike.
yeah,
They hike on the mountain with the aim of, reaching the summit of the mountain.
Yeah.
And amazingly, when people give their, expression of when they got there, the feeling and the scene, because usually when it is the highest point of a given location or a city, sometimes even it is the highest of the entire city. So when you are there, you see the entire city. You have what they call the best view of the entire city. It's so amazing when people who have, reached the summit, express their feelings.
Yeah, and I have witnessed it myself at the Afajatu mountain here in Ghana.
Okay.
And when you try climbing, at a point you virtually have to use both hands and legs to help you, but it's such joy when you are at the top, looking at the scenery.
You feel you have achieved your purpose.
And it's so beautiful to look at the green scenery and the surrounding mountains around it. And particularly if you can sight a waterfall from the top, it's such a beautiful thing.
And yes, today we have technology, but the mountain can also be, we can use it to strategize, in terms of, security and, other things. Because When you are there, you have a best view. You know where and how to place certain things within the town or the city.
That's
So strategically, yeah.
Okay, Jazakumullah. Obviously, to conclude the discussions, have you had any such wonderful view of the mountains, or you want to refer again to your Holy Quran of how beautiful this is?
As a child growing up in my village, that's why we had some mountains where we used to go and climb and look back and see the town. You feel great that, yes, where you can't go with your legs, but you can go there with your eye, with the help of the mountain. So it really empowers you and makes you feel so comfortable. And you see the breeze up there are more cooler and nicer than when you come down. So it's a kind of entertainment, and it gives a lot of life to those who visits it.
All right. Jazakumullah. I think we'll end the discussion here and continue again at another time. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. And thank you for watching Islam and Science on MTA International Africa. We will continue to bring you more episodes relating to the convergence and divergence between Islam and science on various topics. For now, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.